things in wood turning, especially operating machinery and picking up a gouge, or which varnish, which finish shall I use? Does it matter if I put the dye on before the sealing sander, or the sealing sander before the dye, or, you know, does it matter if I wear a mask? Does it matter if we use sanding discs more than once? They all say you shouldn't, but I've got a whole box of used discs which I use several times, you know, they seem to work. But does it really matter? And I thought, well, that's not a bad theme, because we've all probably got does it matter questions. So I'm going to throw it open to you lot to start the ball rolling with any does it matter question. We could start with mine, which was the Jaws thing, if you want something to talk about, but it's really over to you. So I guess the more experienced turners like Brian and Terry know all the answers anyway, so they don't need to ask a question.
You saying we're know-it-alls?
You know it. You know it all.
You said so.
That before.
Well,
You had a question.
Well,
Yeah, I've got a does it matter question. I've got a bowl that is getting a bit dull and I need to refinish it, but I've not got a clue what I put on it in the first place. I was going to use a very fine sander on it and then put some hard wax oil on. Does it matter what was on there before?
Probably not. I've got the same problem. I've got a bowl that's gone all brown at the bottom, and I don't know what to do about it, really.
It does matter. If it was an oil finish before and you want to use an oil finish now, all you really need to do is maybe wipe it with white spirit to get the wax off, put another coat on.
And then just oil it.
Yeah, might want sanding for sake of appearance, but the oil will stick to oil. They say anything sticks to shellac, but if you put some sort of polyurethane on it, or lacquer, or some spray finish, some varnish, you might have problems putting another coat of anything on top of that.
So is it a golden rule that you put sanding sealer on before you do anything else, or do you not? Does it matter whether you use it or not?
Well, I think you have to take everything off that's already on there.
Yeah.
Can't if it's an oil, can you? Because it's sunk in.
That's right. So that one's got to be re-oiled. That's all you can do.
Does sanding sealer stop it from sinking in?
Yes.
Yes.
That's why you can't use oil on sanding sealer.
Yeah, I don't use sanding sealer at all because I always use oil.
So if you don't put finishing oil on top of sanding sealer, is that right?
Correct.
You could do, but there's no need to.
Well, it's not going to sink in much, is it? You want it to dry
Exactly.
out.
Exactly.
You're just putting it on top of a sealed surface.
Yeah. It's never 100% sealed, but the point of an oil finish is you want it to soak in. So you wouldn't usually use shellac.
What about friction polish, which I love? It's brilliant, but I always put it on top of having sealed it first.
Yeah, well, it basically is shellac itself, friction polish.
Exactly.
So
Is it
it's based
shellac?
on shellac, yeah. So you're just putting another coat on, but it's not very durable, I think we'll find.
No,
If you get any moisture on it, it'll stain.
Yeah.
But one of the fundamental issues here surely is how we can best identify the finish that we put on bowls, so when we come back to them years later, we can recognize what it was. And I mean, as you probably all know, I don't write anything on the bottom of my bowls anymore. But I can't help feeling that I ought to develop some kind of code scheme that says the first letter would be the foundation coat, the second letter would be the top coat or something of my finish system.
I can see where you're coming from, Tom.
You want a code for the type of wood as well?
Yeah, well, yeah, that'd be handy, wouldn't it?
You
Yeah.
have to be careful. It might
Especially in the case of Hollyoak.
word.
Yeah, you may not want that word to be on the bottom of a bowl.
Yeah, I had a word like that which passed right over the bowl yesterday.
I'm wondering, is there any truth in the rumor that friction polish and shine juice are one and the same?
Same.
It is the same, David, is it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, but friction polish is a great finish. I mean,
You can make that yourself.
Get a lovely shine on it.
Yeah.
Not for long.
Everything I've seen on YouTube about wood turning, they seem to favour the tenon for mounting in the jaws as opposed to the mortise. Now, I don't understand the logic of that, because when you finished your bowl with the tenon, it's on the same subject. I'll get to the point in a minute. If you finish the bowl, you then take the tenon off to get a smooth bottom, which means you can't then remount the bowl.
Yeah.
With the
And you take the tenon off.
Sorry, say again?
Why do you take the tenon off?
Well, because
Just leave it on.
the tenon's sticking out the bottom and it would wobble.
No.
What you can do, Cliff, is do all your finishing on the bottom of the bowl when the other side is still on the lathe.
Yes,
and
yes.
then you reverse it, or you splash out for some cold jaws.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is when you come back to the bowl in the future, it's all been finished off. You've got no easy way of mounting it unless you've got special jaws. Whereas if you put a mortise in the bottom and you expand the jaws to grip it, you can keep coming back to it and tweaking it and adding to it.
But is it a good idea to leave that recess? If I'm doing a quality bowl, I'd take the recess out.
Yeah, but why? When it's standing on it, nobody sees it.
I use the recess to write in the description of the bowl.
So do I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And anyway, it's the rim on which it stands, isn't it?
No, it's inside the recess.
No, but I mean the recess is inside the rim on which the whole bowl's going to stand anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends if you want to see
because you then always not have a rocking bowl.
There's a background noise.
There's a horrible background noise. I don't quite know. Nothing has changed.
Somebody's got a radio on, I think, or something.
No,
it's
not radio.
feedback.
I think you'll find it's feedback, and the answer I found is if you're not speaking, just mute your microphone, and it goes away.
I mean, I can mute all, but then if you want to speak, you've got to unmute yourselves.
No, don't mute all. We'll lose everybody.
No, we won't lose everybody. It's just they've got to unmute themselves.
We didn't have the feedback until a minute ago.
No.
I know. I'm happy.
It might have been too many people speaking at once.
Coming back to the recess versus spigot, there's a technical reason for the recess being a weaker connection than the spigot, because when your jaws are pushing outwards, you could crack it, couldn't you?
Yeah.
And have done.
Whereas
But
gripping,
equally, you could have the tenon pulled off the bottom.
Had that as well.
That's happened to me much more. That's happened to me much more than when I do a recess.
But when you burst a recess, you do it on the chuck. If you're really heavy-handed, but it probably wouldn't happen from later on when you're making the bowl, would it? Or would it?
Not necessarily. I mean, you'd have to look at the piece that you're turning. That would dictate whether you're going to be putting in a recess or a tenon. If you've got a crack down it, you wouldn't want to put a recess there, because then you'll just blow it all apart.
Why?
So you'd put a tenon on it, keep it together.
But I tend to just look at the fixing of my bowl as part of the design, be it tenon or a recess. It doesn't matter. I just treat it as part of the design either way.
It's only a convention that proper turners take the bottom off, isn't it? I mean, people if you sell the bowls, people who aren't turners don't care if the bottom's taken off or not.
you can always put
It depends on
Depends how you designed it. You might want a foot on the bowl or not.
Yeah, it depends on the look of it. Some bowls
Yes.
need a smooth bottom.
Yes, but whatever you put on the bottom, it should be part of the design. And I think Tom's quite right. I don't think it's necessary to take it off. It's just convention that we're always told.
You can make it look nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The right size, not too deep.
And you can write in it, and it's sort of hidden from general view, but it's nonetheless got your mark in it, maybe the date you made it or whatever.
Yeah.
Quite often, and something I've seen professional turners do, but quite often what I do is I put a a tenon and a recess at the bottom of the bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So there's such a small gap between the tenon and the recess. I can just get my jaws in there. Choice, I can cut the dovetail on either side, and I usually cut it on both sides, and I can go one way or t'other way, depending on which way the wood behaves in the course of turning.
That's a good idea.
I saw Richard Draffen do that today, where he had a tenon, and then just to finish it off, he rounded over the shoulders of the tenon, just made them not look like beads, and then he put a round and a hollow into the tenon. That just kind of smoothed it out a little bit, so it wasn't flat, and it was it gave it a ring to sit on rather than a flat base.
Yeah.
There's a flat base.
When I cut my tenons, I always dish them, so that if I want to stand the bowl on it later, it's just got a ring edge, and it's perfectly stable.
George, you had your hand up right at the beginning.
No, mine was the question about the finishing.
Right. Sorry. Okay.
But on the tenon thing, I still feel that even with a recess, I prefer to finish it and just leave a slightly concave surface on the bottom.
Yeah, I think my
on a really small bowl.
Yeah, my motivation is driven by the knowledge that I'm going to want to go back and improve on what I did. So I leave it as remountable.
Okay.
Yeah, but rechucking it may mean you have to turn the whole thing, because you'll never rechuck it perfectly. So you'll have to return the exterior, outside and inside.
Yeah, you're most likely going to be sanding it, aren't you, Dave?
Sanding or polishing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, in that case, that's different.
And what is our view on sanding for 40 grit and 80 grit and upwards? But I'm talking about 40.
I was delighted to hear that. Who was it? Professional
Angus
turner?
Klein.
Angus. He starts with 40 grit, and I thought, oh, that's brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah, but don't you find that if you use a coarse grit on things like oak, it takes away different parts of the grain, so you end up with a wavy surface? Because some parts of the surface
Maybe that's what he's looking for.
than others, so you don't end up with a flat surface.
I don't get that. What do you mean you don't end up with a flat surface?
Well, so, with this, some of the bits of the grain stick up.
Yeah.
Bits of the grain stick up, and bits of the grain are some of the lines in the grain are softer than the light lines might be softer than the dark lines in the grain.
And that only works at coarse grit.
Well, some people say that's a reason to use sanding sealer, because it hardens up the softer bits and can help avoid the waviness.
Yeah.
But he's probably using 40 grit because he's making such huge objects.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to float the gouge over that to get a nice smooth finish.
Who are you talking about there, Dave?
Angus Klein.
Angus Klein.
If you turn a 10-inch bowl, you can get a nice glass finish by floating your bevel.
Yeah. Well, I've never succeeded at that, but I'm told you can.
not on a bowl that's 4 foot wide or whatever it was.
In my case, not on a bowl that's 4 inches wide.
Well, I'm with you, Julie. But my question would be, how high a grit do I need to go up to? And
you know, George, I find
the grits going up to 1200. Do I really need to go up to 1200?
Well,
or does it matter? Is it dependent on the wood?
It depends on the wood. And it depends on the size of the piece, I reckon. There's a rule of thumb that says the smaller the item, the higher the gloss you want. Not necessarily, of course, but a lot of people think that. And a hard, fine-grained wood will show scratches much worse than a softer timber. If you do take it to a gloss, so a hard, like the exotic woods, you want to go to the 1200. But if you're working on a bit of oak or lime or something, you go to 320, maybe 400.
I use these Abranet pads, which go to 4000, and they bring a really nice polish.
But I've heard it said that on coarse grain woods like oak, you shouldn't go to too high a grit. But I didn't quite understand why that should be.
Is that because they're open grain as opposed to something like a mahogany
or a rosewood.
Padua, yes, or rosewood.
Yeah, well, Martin Saban-Smith, he said he never goes beyond 320.
He doesn't use any exotic timbers, though.
But also, I was impressed with some of his YouTube things because he always used the compressed air between different grits, so that it wasn't carrying any of the residue from the previous grit. And
the abrasive.
Yeah,
and you're supposed to clear the dust.
Yeah,
out of the pores.
And I have noticed
your lungs.
It makes a difference.
Well, if you use cheap sanding discs, that can cause scratches too. I made the mistake of getting some Silverline abrasives, and that was a big mistake.
But is it a mistake to reuse sanding discs?
It depends how worn they are. Once they've been used and they're worn, yes, you chuck them away unless they're washable. The web-based, the mesh type of abrasives, you can wash them off. But once the abrasive's gone, it doesn't make.
No, I'm talking about the circular discs you put on your
pad.
But compressed air again will clear out the debris, which will make them effective again.
Well, it depends. Once the abrasive has been used up on those discs, it's gone, and there's no abrasive at all. All you're going to do is heat the wood up instead. If there's a lot of heat, it means the abrasive is worn.
Yeah, no, that.
And presumably, the finer the abrasive, the quicker the wear.
No.
Well,
Why?
You're not using it much. When you're getting up to the fine end, you're only, sometimes the scratches are almost non-discernible. Depends how fussy you are, but sometimes it's just 2 or 3 passes.
Since Martin Saban-Smith made that comment about not reusing sandpaper, I've been watching my own sandpaper very closely, and I've been really surprised at the amount of dust that is created by even 1,000 and 1,200 grit papers. It's extraordinary how dusty the surface of the abrasive gets after a bit of use. So they don't feel as though they're abrasive, but they damn well do work. And the old worn ones, exactly the same.
Well,
some people
if the abrasive is still on there, it's going to work. Well, the abrasive has only got a finite life. Eventually, it's going to stop working.
It's like sharpening the tools.
And it doesn't save any money. You're just damaging the wood a bit.
Some people recommend that you use soft pads for the finer grits. That can help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the standard sanding pad you get is a certain flexibility to it, certain softness, and they say that the coarser the grit, the harder the pad should be, and vice versa. So if you're going up to 1,200, you want a very spongy one.
I agree with that. I found that I've got 800 of the NiWeb, or whatever it's called, Merca, and it's stiff. It does tend to scratch if you're not careful. So now I'm using the pads at the higher end, and they wear out fairly quickly, but you get a decent finish off them.
I've had an intriguing one recently. I use the what's it called? The web stuff. What's it called?
NiWeb.
Abranet.
Abranet. I use Abranet. And recently I found that the 80 grit doesn't cut anywhere near as much as the 120 grit. Has anybody got, and that's on a wide range of timbers, has anybody got the slightest idea as to why that would be?
Probably because there's more grits.
Probably because they got the printing.
Or 50% more, yeah. Well, 180 doesn't do as well as 120, so it doesn't wash. It's weird.
Any different?
That's really strange. I've got Abranet and I've never noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I mean, to the point about the different densities of the pads, I use a 4-density system. I've got 2 densities that came with my Axminster inertial sander, and then I have soft pads from Simon Hope, and they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I use them for a lot of different things too. So if I put a soft pad on the dense pads or a soft pad on the soft pads, I get totally different final densities. And so I've got 4 different densities. And I find that the main reason for using the softness is if I've got an uneven bowl. Because I turn a lot of greenwood, I very often have an uneven bowl. So the softer the pad, the more it keeps up with the surface as the surface moves towards and away from the sander. So that's the only place I've really ever noticed the density making a big difference. And also conformity to a surface. Yes, I mean, a round bowl, it helps to have a soft pad.
Yeah. I've got another question on that. I use lots of pads with Velcro, but I cut my own out, and they're nowhere near as neat and round as the ones I buy, and they tend to be a bit oversized. Does that matter? Would I get a better finish if I actually splash out and get the ones that are exactly the right size to fit on the pad?
As long as the edge of the pad doesn't scratch the wood, that's what I found. If I cut it not very carefully, but there's a company, Enfield, that stamps that stuff out, I believe.
I've got you can buy a 2-inch,
cutter.
Yeah, and I cut all my own, but I can't get a 3-inch cutter, unfortunately. I use scissors to cut it.
Some people use them square.
David, look at a badge making company. They have 3-inch cutters.
Oh, it's much cheaper to just bash them out than.
But the cutter might be expensive.
Yes,
I just use scissors.
You said badge making. What's
a badge making company?
Making what kind of badges?
Any badge, button badges.
Round ones.
Oh yeah, okay.
And literally, I mean, many years ago, I used to print and make badges, and you had all sorts of different size cutters. You could have a 6-inch badge, you could have a 3-inch badge, you could have a 2-inch badge, 1.25 inch, all sorts of size.
You just whack it with a hammer, and it's like a.
Well, there was a proper lever cutter, but I'm sure that you could whack it with a hammer; it would work just as well.
Oh, okay.
I thought you'd make your badges the size of a grand piano, Julian.
Oh, that's only a special request.
That's the shape of a grand piano.
I make mine with a hole saw. The toothed hole saw for cutting holes in plaster.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh yeah,
that's a good idea.
Teeth off.
I've got a 3-inch one.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yeah.
Find the teeth of those, and then it's just a ring that you put on the pillar drill, and you drill through with the ring.
Yeah.
From the not the abrasive side, from the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do a whole set. I put all of the sheets of the different grits in one lump, and I cut right the way through the whole pack.
Wow, that's a great idea.
Like that.
Very good idea.
Brilliant idea.
But I do exactly the same with a pair of scissors.
It's not quite
I don't
as
have room
round.
for a pillar drill.
You black and sides.
But did I hear somebody earlier say that you could use square?
I said that. Yeah, I've never tried it, but people say the corners stick out and it doesn't make any difference.
Well, they get rubbed off.
It depends. It can flap in. If you're doing a bowl, it doesn't seem good.
Not very good.
I use scissors anyway.
If you have an oversized disc, like a 3-inch on a 2-inch pad, and then you cut little slits all the way around.
Yeah.
Then you've got a kind of, it bends.
I find on soft pads, it doesn't matter, Dave. I did that all the time, use oversized pads on oversized pieces of abrasive on my pads. And I find it just adds to a roundness. It makes a softer edge to what I'm sanding.
Did you cut little slits all the way around, or you not bother?
No, I don't bother.
Right.
I noticed a lot of YouTubers have got something called a dimple disc, and it's got like a perforated thing all the way around the disc. And try as I might, I've never found them available. Buy.
What's good about them?
Well, that softens the edge, so you don't have that hard edge.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, no, not a problem.
Never found that a problem, ever.
Yeah.
I haven't said hello to Ian, and nor have I heard him. Hello, Ian.
Hello. Yeah, if I can change the subject, I've got a question about speed.
Who were talking?
My lathe has got the usual belts, and it's got a very peculiar electronic readout, which doesn't reflect the speed at all. So the question is, should I be bothered that I don't know what the speed is, and how do you determine the optimum speed?
Brian now, I think.
Well done, Brian.
Go, Brian. Wait.
Yeah, Brian.
I don't know that I ever do turn at the optimal speed. It's just how I feel at the time I'm turning.
I think the optimum speed is
The chips are coming off quick enough, I'll speed it up.
Don't they say you turn it up until it shakes, until it wobbles, and you back it off a bit?
Or you overcome the wobble and go a bit faster.
As you turn it, the wobbling should go, and you can turn it faster. Would that be the case?
Yeah,
I think Ian
I would
wants-
turn it back when it wobbles.
Yeah.
And then turn it up once you've cut a bit back.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think Ian's question is, how do you know what the speed is?
You don't need to know.
I'm not too bothered about that because I've given up trying to work it out. But
Stuart Batty, well-known turner, said that in one of his presentations, the ideal turning speed is just short of suicidal. And it's true.
You have to.
Do
He's
get
still alive, to tell you.
Ian, I've got a speed measuring device you can borrow, which I got when because I've got a lathe which has got 3 belts, but also is electronic as well. But my lathe doesn't have a readout at all. So I bought for a few quid a measuring device. You just put a couple of light stickers on the chuck, and it reflectors, and it reflects a beam and gives you a readout. You're more than welcome to borrow it, but it doesn't matter. I think it's what if you're in the learning stage, you think, oh, it's got to be 700. It's got to be. It doesn't matter. What you feel, the lathe, the wood will tell you if it's comfortable. If the lathe is shaking itself to bits, you're either going too slow, or the piece of wood is too big, or you're going too fast. But you work it out. You don't need to know
which one?
There is one situation where speed is very important, and that is if you're doing spindle work.
Right.
If you've got a long spindle and you're trying to turn features on the spindle, if you're going too fast, it'll whip in the centre.
Right.
If it's thin.
I had a situation like that where I was turning a spindle for someone's staircase a few weeks ago, and I just could not get the thing to work properly in the centre of the spindle. So I had to hold it with my hand while I was turning it to stop it from jumping.
You can't get supports with the wheels.
Well, I hadn't got a support. It's not that easy when you're doing a stair spindle because they're so long and you've got so many features on there. Where do you put the support? When do you move it? So a hand was the only option, but you can't run it fast because as soon as it starts to go out of balance, it will whirl and it will fly off in pieces.
Yeah, I have had that. I had noticed that one of the spindles I did when I took it off was cracked in the middle.
Yeah.
Bent a bit, yeah.
I hope you're wearing gloves when you held it.
No, you mustn't wear gloves.
Oh, really?
No.
Get caught.
It'll catch.
On anything and you rip your fingers off.
Yeah, but you get hot without gloves.
Yeah, well, you let go when it gets hot.
Or hold on tighter, Brian.
And you have a bucket of water ready.
I think we should rename Brian the pragmatic wood turner.
The old timers would use their hand as a steady when the wood was still square.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
How many
and it
fingers did
worked.
they have left when you met them?
So what are you making, Ian? What is it you're producing?
Well, I'm making some candlesticks at the moment. I'm trying to copy an old German set of 3 candlesticks mounted on metal.
how long are they?
Not very long, about 8 inches or so.
Oh, that's no problem, then, is it?
No, that won't be any problem. No.
Good.
Well, there's a situation there, and I don't know if this will come up for you, but I don't sleep very well at night, and so I started doing the sums on turning, and I realised that the graph that's supplied with my lathe that tells you at what diameter bowl your maximum speed is actually corresponds to approximately 30 miles an hour if you've got tail support, and approximately 20 miles an hour if you don't.
No wonder you can't get to sleep.
Well, no, this is as a result of not getting sleep. I worked this out, not the other way around. But as a result, I worked out the two numbers that stopped me having to open the damn manual every time to care about whether it's safe or unsafe. If I divide 25,000 by the diameter of the piece that I'm turning with tail support, I get the maximum speed. If I divide 19,000 by the diameter of the piece I'm turning, I get the outboard unsupported speed maximum.
What unit of measurement are you using for the diameter?
Centimeters, sorry.
Yeah.
All in centimeters.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a rule of thumb once which said it was 9,000 divided by the diameter in inches, and that gives you the speed there, some kind of optimum speed.
There you go. It'll be about the same thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess so.
And somebody else in one of our demos, I think, once said that you've got to be careful over 1,000 RPM, because if it isn't properly secured, it'll take off when it leaves the lathe. Whereas below 1,000 RPM, it won't. I've never tested that. And actually, I don't think I believe it, but that's what somebody said.
Well, that's why it should be, the jaws of the chuck should be secured in the correct order. And otherwise, the jaws do not meet properly.
No, I don't think that's the reason. We never really.
Are they not symmetrical?
No. The reason is
the jaws are made in sets.
Yes.
And that's why they're numbered. And the faces are made to sit against each other. So if you put them, one against number 3, it's not actually made to sit against number 3.
I've got another explanation. If you look at the back of the jaws, you hold all the jaws as a set, look at the back together, you'll find that the thread on the back, or the groove on the back, starts in a different place on each jaw.
that is the reason.
It's a spiral.
Okay.
When you first put the jaws on, the thread, the leading thread has to feed into number 1.
Yes.
If it doesn't feed into number 1, you're in trouble.
It's a spiral, so it's always going to be variable.
So I think that's the real reason that they have to be in the right order.
For those of us using Sorby jaws, you don't actually mean jaws, you mean carriers. You mean the bit that's inside the chuck, don't you? That's moved by the screw.
The bit
The threaded part.
is the thread.
Yeah.
The spiral.
The threaded part, because you can change the jaws on top of those carriers.
The leading edge of that thread has to feed into jaw number 1 when you start.
Yeah. But if the jaws themselves are separate, it doesn't really matter which order they go on. And I've got a Vicmark chuck, and the jaws, the upper part of the jaw, they're all numbered, but I've got, it says 1, 2, 3, 3 or something like that. They got it wrong at the factory, and I called the dealer and said, what's going on here? And they got back to Vicmark and said, well, it's just a mistake in the factory. Doesn't make any difference. They as long as the threaded part is put in the right order, as you say, David, the actual gripping part, they're all the same. They're all concentric.
I don't think Jeff's theory is right. I think the real reason is what we were just discussing. If you don't put them in the right order, they're not going to meet. Or maybe that is your thing, Jeff.
That's what Jeff said.
Yeah.
I suppose the ultimate test would be to deliberately put them all in the wrong place and see what happens. I've never done it.
It doesn't work. I've done it accidentally.
Okay.
They won't meet in the middle.
That's it.
Can I ask a question about lathe speed and sanding? Some of the recommendations are reduce your lathe speed to like 500 or whatever it is when you do your sanding. in order to allow the abrasive to bite better. Is that all right? Is that true?
A lot of people say that, especially on the American forums,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's true. I think especially if you've got wood that's a bit sort of patchy, it's got softer bits and harder bits, the higher speed, I think, will help the sander skip over the soft bits.
Okay.
I think the clue.
So I don't change the speed.
If you're sanding and it's too hot, if you get, you're either pressing too hard or you're running it too fast.
Yeah. Okay.
If you slow it down so that it's not getting hot, you're getting all the cutting without spoiling the wood or clogging up your grit on your sanding.
Wood.
Or burning your fingers.
Yes.
That's true as well.
If it gets hot, you're doing something wrong.
Okay.
If you do green turning, you have to turn the speed right down because the piece will be distorted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're turning a green piece that is distorted.
Yes.
Because there's no other reason for turning a green piece slowly, is there?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
You turn it at the usual speed, but when it is, if that's a whole other issue, isn't it? Whether you sand a green turn bowl while it's still green, or whether you let it dry and then you sand it. And if you do that, you've got to turn the speed right down.
Well, funny enough, I'm just running an experiment because I discovered something while I was sanding a green piece with very coarse sandpaper, trying to remove some horrible tool marks before I let it settle down. And I very nearly went through the bottom. So I consigned the bowl to the mental bin and used it for experiments. And as part of the experimentation, I finished it while it was still wet. And what's happening is rather interesting. It looks as though the grain is sinking in the soft parts and rising, if you like, in the hard parts, which is quite an attractive finish. And it's keeping that finish through, or it's drying out through the sanding sealer, in fact, I used, and then wax.
Yes. You get a texture to it. It's almost leathery sometimes.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yes, yes. Does it matter? Is the finish going to stay, do you think?
The finish will be just the same. But what I find is that the sunken bits, they can reflect the light from a finish. And it doesn't look quite right to me. It's glossy in spots.
Yeah, I've got the same. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But I've got a bowl here, which is just, it's a big one. And I don't know, that shows up. It's got the same effect. The grooves down it that appeared very quickly as it started to dry.
Is that what I think it is, Terry?
It's the famous beech, yeah.
The famous beech, yeah.
The smaller one of the two.
Uh-huh.
But it's very textured. And the dilemma you've got is, do you finish it when it is wet, in which case you can let it shrink like that and you get a texture, or if you leave it to dry and then you sand it, you get a smooth finish. But that sanding then is quite difficult to do. And you have to turn the lathe down to about 20 RPM if you do that.
Can I ask another question, which I think came up when Angus Klein was doing his big stuff? He used a spindle gouge on the exterior of the bowl or the vase he was making, rather than a bowl gouge. And I can't quite understand why he does that rather than use a bowl gouge.
He would do that because a spindle gouge is usually ground to a sharper angle, I don't know, 30 degrees rather than 40 or 50. And the shape of the flute is different as well, but you can only do it for very light cuts. It can be dangerous. What he didn't say is that it can be dangerous. That was one of the things I objected to about his presentation.
And in what way can it be dangerous, Terry?
Because if you get a catch, it will be easier to get a catch, and it could be rather more disastrous. And you know, with spindle roughing gouges, you shouldn't use those on a bowl because they can snap. Well, a spindle detail gouge, which is what he was using, is slender, more whippy. It's not dangerous if you do it carefully.
He was cutting on the front though, wasn't he? He wasn't cutting on the edge.
How do you mean?
Well, he was twisting the gouge round so that he was presenting bevel onto the bowl or the turn, and he was using the front edge to cut.
Yes.
And it was a shear cut as well.
Yes.
A slicing cut and a finishing cut, and it really works well. If you've got a bit of wood that is inclined to tear out, the spindle gouge will clean it up very nicely.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, as a result of that presentation, I rushed out and bought a bigger spindle gouge than the one that I've been using. And I turned my small one into a much finer angled one. And I'm finding that works brilliantly. But the bigger one I'm having real trouble with. Sometimes I've had the most beautiful finishes that required absolutely no sandpaper. In fact, sandpaper would have ruined it. And sometimes I've had no finish at all. I mean, I can't get it to cut properly. And I have no idea what's going wrong. And I looked at it as I was sharpening it, and I realized that although I was sharpening it in my jig and therefore certain I was getting the same angles, it actually wasn't sharp. And I'm not sure what's going on there. Anybody got any thoughts as to what might have been happening?
How big
Was
was
there a very big burr on it?
No.
No grinder burr?
No, I don't think so.
When you went out to buy the big spindle gouge, what size was it?
Oh, it's not that big. Is it 5/8, I think? Something like that? No, maybe, no. Might be bigger than that. Maybe 3/4 of an inch or something.
Is there any book or something that lists all of the different gouges with a sort of a picture and specification? Because I get totally confused between bowl gouges, spindle gouges, roughing gouges, whatever else. And I can't remember which is which and why I would use one and not the other. Is there any sort of reference book?
That was the question, wasn't it?
Well, Cliff, I would say the bowl gouge is the one with a deep flute, and until you know what you're doing, it's the only one you should use on a bowl. But you can use bowl gouges on spindle.
The other day, I was comparing the two effects on, I can't remember what sort of wood, and I was making really fast progress with a bowl gouge and absolutely no progress with a spindle gouge. It was really, really slow. So one good reason for using a bowl gouge rather than a spindle gouge is anyway, you've got a much narrower tip, and it digs in like blazes, or to your detriment if you get it wrong, but it does not make quick progress.
I used to use spindle gouges a lot for bowl turning, but ground as bowl gouges. So much more obtuse grind. With
like what sort of angle?
Probably about 45, 50 degrees, with a bit of a fingernail, and a reasonably sized gouge as well for medium-sized bowls, and it worked very well. But I don't know if it works any better than the ordinary bowl gouge.
So, what angle would be a spindle gouge?
Probably about 30.
Right.
Although, different grinds for different purposes. But it's the skinny little cutting edge that gives you a beautiful clean surface on a bowl. But as Tom says, it's inclined to dig and it's risky. And what you don't want is to have a spindle gouge hurled back in your eye when you're turning a bowl.
I mean, I've just got the Wolverine jig system, so I'm about to start attacking all my tools to sharpen them up consistently, but I need to know what I'm doing.
Batty's got a great YouTube on that.
Who has?
Steve Batty?
Stuart Batty?
Stuart Batty.
Stuart Batty, yeah. Stuart Batty YouTube on sharpening.
Thank you.
Well, that came from Terry. He told me about it. Is that right, Terry?
Stuart Batty's got a very good series of videos, yeah. But they're on Vimeo, not on YouTube.
Oh.
On what?
Vimeo, not on YouTube.
There's another one called Turning a Bowl. It's got lots of videos on grinding and different tools.
And that's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
His name is Ken.
Ken.
In the last 3 issues of Wood Turning magazine, there's been a series on sharpening as well.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen them.
Uh-huh.
Right, I shall check that out before I get going with my Wolverine.
But Cliff, the thing I most remember from learning to turn is that in my early days, months, years, people kept telling me this is how you do it. And apart from the fact that I get great fun from working out how to do it in the way that suits me, the more I notice demos, the more I notice that everybody does that the way they want to do it. Everybody's got their own set of rules. There's no real set of rules that matters, except the one thing that Terry mentioned a moment ago. You know, you don't use a spindle roughing gouge on a bowl, especially on the inside of one.
You soon find out, yeah.
Well, yeah, and painfully so, yeah.
But Cliff, the problem with your Wolverine system, it's great. It'll do just what you want, but you've got to know what you want.
That's exactly where I'm at the moment. I want to know what I need to aim for. I mean, I've done one fingernail grind, and it looks superb, beautifully consistent, sharp edge, and it works. But that's just one tool. I've got all these other ones that I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, so I need to check first.
Another reason for only having 3 tools.
Well, yeah.
Cliff, I once saw an Irish turner, I can't remember where, do a demo, and he was demonstrating with a bowl gouge that was deliberately asymmetrical. And I stopped worrying at that point.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Clip that someone put on WhatsApp, and I think it was probably you, Dave. In the Russian dolls, the production of the dolls.
Oh yeah, that was great.
They were using there. They were only using 2. One was like a curved ring gauge that they're using for the inside, and one was like, and the other one on the outside was like a pocket knife.
Yeah. Well, the inside one is the hook tool.
It was a hook tool, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, and the outside one is like a really long skew.
Yeah.
But very effective.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of things. If it's what you get used to turning and what you get used to using. That's why I'm putting up my hollowing ring tool up for sale. Not for me.
Why not? What was your experience with it, Dave?
I don't know. I end up buying a Simon Hope carbide tool that did the job super fast, very clean, and I didn't really need to use it. To be honest, I really didn't give the tool a chance, but I thought I don't need it, sell it, give someone else a chance to have a use. You know, spend £80 on a tool that does a job really, really quickly. But I don't know.
What did you buy?
I don't know about this.
What did you buy instead?
I bought a Simon Hope hollowing tool. It's on a 45 degrees square bar with a 6mm cutter.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Is that like a Rolly? Rolly Monroe? No.
Not at all.
No, the Rolly ones, they're adjustable. This one's not adjustable. But does it? Not for doing internals. Does all right for hollowing.
And the square section hollowing means you can't rotate it.
No, it keeps you at the consistent angle, 45 degrees.
What does anybody think that would work on a bit of high-speed steel? If you got a high-speed steel square bar and just milled the end to 45 degrees, forget the advantages of carbide and all that. Would that work?
Well,
Can
they
you-
used to sell tools like that. I've got one. There was a fashion for them. Someone invented that, and it gave you a sort of shear scrape. But I don't use it. I bought one at one of the shows, but I don't use it.
I've got some square bar lying around. I thought I might try making one.
Yeah.
Give it a go.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you can try if it will work by just tilting the ordinary one.
But I can't keep it at the tilt. That's the advantage of Dave's Simon Hope thing.
Yeah.
The square bar sits flat.
It keeps you on a 45, correct angle.
Keeps you honest.
Yeah.
Someone invented a skew chisel like that years ago. Square shaft with the skew chisel edge going corner to corner. So it wasn't. So it was at a 45-degree angle. They said it was catch proof. I don't know. Maybe it was.
Jeremy, hello.
Hi.
I haven't heard from you tonight. How are you?
Trying to stay awake because I was up till 2 o'clock this morning. I'm trying to follow what's going on, but I've got no particular problems, mainly because I haven't been able to turn now for a long time. I'm hoping to get better this year, but at the moment it's still pretty problematic. And I find, I thought I'd do something yesterday. I actually got as far as the shed. I needed to cut something on the bandsaw, and the first thing that happened was the blade came off.
Oh.
And it's so bloody cold out there to start fiddling with the bandsaw blade.
Yeah, it's a pain, isn't it?
What I was wondering is whether it would be safe to leave a heater in an on position, but switch off everything in a fuse box indoors.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
I walk out of my shed, I leave everything on, particularly the lights. And then I've got a RCD, is it, in my room?
Yeah.
I flick it, everything goes off. But if you don't leave the lights on and you forget to switch the RCD off, you'll see the lights blazing in the middle of the night in the garden. You think, oh my God, I forgot to switch it off. And if you've got 3 kilowatt heaters going, I mean, it can half use up the juice.
Yes.
Does it heat the shed?
Yeah. I've got a does it matter question directly related to Jeremy's problem. Bandsaw. I always understood that when you're using a bandsaw, you bring the guide down as close as you can to the work to keep the blade true.
Yeah.
Short.
I'm a great fan of the repair shop on the television.
So am I love it.
Well, the guy that does the woodwork, whose name has just flown straight out of my head, but Will, he's clearly extraordinarily talented, but he's done some really tricky bandsaw work, and he leaves the guide right at the top, so that the band has got maybe 12 inches free.
Maybe it's for the camera work. Is that possible?
Maybe, but he's doing really intricate bandsaw work and curving and things.
It depends on the size of the piece you're cutting.
Yeah, well, it does it, frequently, and it bothers me every time I watch it. And yet, product is good.
I'm glad it bothers you.
Sorry,
I'm glad it bothers you.
Yeah,
yeah,
because you won't do it.
Scary.
Yeah,
He probably needs to see the line that he's cutting to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but he doesn't need to have the guard right up for that.
No.
It's just slackness.
It's a fundamental rule. If you can guard a thing, you do guard it.
Yeah.
It's just it just takes one slip, doesn't it? If you've got that much blade exposed.
Something else they say about a bandsaw is if you're not going to be using it for a while, you should release the tension.
Correct.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Otherwise the saw gets stretched.
The problem there is when you go back a week or two later, you forget to put the tension back.
then you need to check your machine before you start
But a lot of people say that doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I'd never change it on mine.
it. Yeah, but you're using yours a lot more than a lot of people would use theirs.
True.
But if you're not using it from, say, 1 week to another, it's going to take all the spring or the tautness out of the blade. So if you slacken it off just a little bit, it lets it rest. And then when you go back to use it again, it goes back to taut.
There's also the
people say
the wheel has got a rubber ring on it to tension it. If you leave it static, the rubber ring develops a flat.
Yes.
So they say. But I've never found that an issue, and I never take the tension off mine.
All right. Oh, maybe I've been wasting my time.
But there's more variation in the load on the blade when you're cutting. I don't think the blade stretches. Could be the rubber on the ring that gets indented, but I don't think the blade stretches.
But even if the rubber gets indented, if it's indented all the way round, which it would be after a while, then does it matter?
Yeah, but if you're leaving it under pressure, only the top part is going to get the indent.
True, but then the next time a different part will get indented.
That also is true.
So eventually you get a circumference.
Yeah.
I don't know. If it's horses for courses.
David, any other questions that you've come up with that haven't been covered?
Well, they're not my questions. I want you.
No. You asked about 5 or 6 questions.
Well, I think
Which were very interesting.
They've all been discussed with sanding sealer, spindle gouge, the jaws in a chart. Those are my 3, and I thought they would stimulate further questions, which
they have.
And, I don't know what
When
else.
we've watched the professional demos, they all seem to be working in workshops that are pristine.
Well, like mine, you mean?
I'm wondering who among us actually clears up after a session?
They've got
Or
staff.
constantly wading around at about 6 inches of sawdust.
They've got staff.
Yeah,
They have assistants to do. They have cleaner uppers.
I do remember asking Jeremy about this. Not Jeremy, Jonathan about this. And Jonathan said he had an arrangement with the with his cleaner. And once a month, she would go down to the shed and she would use his vacuum cleaner to sweep up and clear. What she would not do was empty the bag.
I do my own cleaning.
Right.
My wife does my
maybe,
workshop.
Jeremy, may I suggest who does the cleaning?
Me.
Bad luck.
I don't think Roberta would do that for me somehow.
Funnily enough, no, neither do I.
No, not that I wanted to.
Oh, you're not saying the right things to your wife. That's what it is.
I do have an answer to this. You see, what you do, you get neighbours who have gerbils and rabbits, and you give it to them. You
And a fast breeder reactor.
Oh,
I give my shavings to someone who's very keen on allotments, but the problem is restricting the mess near the lathe. I'm actually going to be putting up a shower curtain in my workshop to try and make some sort of enclosure within which the dirt will stay.
Yeah.
That works well.
I have a roller blind that does exactly that. Works very well.
oh. You've been cutting green wood, eh, Cliff?
Gennadi's got a curtain all around his lathe. He's not here, but I've been to his workshop.
No, I obsessively clean up around my lathe simply for safety reasons because I've got a very small workshop If I trip over the damn stuff or slip on it, then
But I've got a bench behind me with a lot of my finer tools for electronic type stuff, and that's a nightmare because it gets covered in sawdust and sanding dust and things, and I can't vacuum it because half the stuff would disappear up the tube.
You mix
cover it.
Two wrong hobbies.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. I have a slightly dodgy back and I stand on a rubber mat. Does anybody else do the same, I wonder? It
Yes.
helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, very good.
And it means that when I come to cleaning up, I can use a dustpan, a brush, or a vacuum cleaner, depending on what's quicker and cheaper and easier, because I can kneel on the floor of the rubber mat.
Yeah.
Right, lift it up and push the stuff under. Yeah.
Oh, you do that as well.
I never start a new project without cleaning up the old one. I just can't do that.
That's right.
If you're turning wet wood, you have to clean up the wet shavings.
Yeah,
Especially off your lathe, because otherwise it rusts.
that's right. If you leave a log standing on its end on the bandsaw table,
Oh, bad
which is
news.
done, and then you come back a week later, you got a bloody ring of rust,
A round hole all the way through.
and that's really bad news. So now I've learned my lesson.
God bless compressed air, I say. I blow the thing off all the time.
And if it was oak, you'd have a horrible black stain in the wood.
Yeah. I've got a technical question. So I need some help. When I'm using a skew, I'm quite used to using a skew. I don't get many catches these days, but what I do get is the bloody thing bounces. And the bigger the diameter of the work that I'm doing, the more bounce I get. Any clues from anyone what I'm doing wrong?
Is the wood straight
The bigger
grain?
the bounce is because the energy of the wood turning round is going to force it much more. You've got more wood turning around, you've got more energy being used up, and that's why it's bouncing normally. Is because you turned the skew a little bit to one side too much.
You know, I've tried turning it to almost 0 degrees, and then that doesn't make any difference.
Have you got it really sharp?
Yeah.
Are you pressing the bevel on the wood?
I try not to, but probably yes.
It should float over the wood,
Right.
not press. And if the wood, ideally for a skew, should be straight grain.
Right. Yeah.
If you've got funny grain, that will upset it.
You have a special tool, Terry, to straighten grain.
Yeah, with your eyes.
One thing I do on the skew is it's an oval skew, and I grind it with a convex shape on it rather than a concave.
Yeah. Does that help?
Well, I don't know whether that's the cause of it. To the
Yes.
bevel is
Yes, it is, Brian. I've just changed my grind as a result of the article in Wood Turning magazine on how to grind. I'd been grinding my skews on the side of my CBN wheel, which is flat, and I found it excruciatingly difficult to do, and I kept getting a convex shape, and I couldn't get the damn thing sharp. And I've now done exactly as the article shows. I just do it on the front. It's a concave sharpening, and it's much sharper, and it really works as a skew. So that could well be the reason.
It's interesting because until recently, a lot of people were saying, make the bevel convex to make it easier to use.
Yeah.
I've always thought flat or concave would be better.
Well, the detail on my sharpening that I find makes it easier to use is actually I don't keep a straight edge along the edge. I make that slightly curved, convex, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's much easier to avoid a catch that way than having a straight edge.
Another thing, Brian, to look at is the position of the tool rest.
All right.
Get the height right. so you can hold it comfortably, close to the wood, and make sure the angle of the handle as well on the tool. But probably I think you'll find it's pressure.
Right, what is the right height for the rest?
Well,
15 mil.
The height that puts the cutting edge in the best position, that doesn't cause this bounce, that makes it easy to handle.
Right. And should the
you could experiment with that.
Should the chisel be laying down the angle of the rest, or should it be sitting on its edge?
The chisel should be on its side, on its long edge.
No, you know that the rest is like a chamfer, like a wedge.
Yeah.
Should the chisel be sitting on the edge, or should it be sitting on the flat of the rest?
On the edge.
On the edge, right.
Yeah. Fulcrum as close to the wood as you can get it. Make sure the bevel is laid down without pressure onto the surface, and a really sharp edge and cutting edge, and you should be fine.
Right.
Oh, and the other thing is wax the tool rest.
Right.
Make sure there's no sharp edges on the side of the tool.
Sorry, wax
the tool rest.
Oh, the tool rest.
The chisel itself, the oval, has got a square edge on one side and a round edge on the other.
Yeah.
And the round edge is on the pointed end of the
yes.
oval, which suggests that that's what should go on the tool rest. But that doesn't necessarily work.
The rounded edge is on the long point, the toe point.
Yes.
Well, the screw can be used either way up for planing and for making beads.
Yeah, but you're
about planing, aren't you?
You've got a sharp edge on the flat side. It buggers up the tool rest.
Yeah. So you need to soften, even though it's a square edge, you need to soften the arises so it will slide easily. Wax the tool rest. Someone else said that the only thing you can do that will improve your turning without having to practice is to wax the tool rest.
Right.
It's quite true. Rub it with a candle and then see what difference.
I've got lots of things to try there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brian.
Yep.
I'll put up a video on our WhatsApp later by a turner called David Dalby. He turns with a round skew,
right?
And it's quite amazing. And yeah, but as soon as we're finished, I'll put that up.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Right, Brian, I've got a set of the Sorby modular tool rests, and with a few important exceptions, they're made of hardened steel.
Yes.
And I try to use those rests for everything I do because they don't mark and because the tools do slide more easily up and down. And in particular for skew work.
Is it tool rest a round bar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by definition, you've only got a point fulcrum, on the what's it called, the tangent of the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got the same set.
I'm going to have to go, people. So thank you very much. Very interesting discussion and very helpful. Lots of things to follow up.
Right.
But
I think now, the next meeting is on when, Julian?
I haven't got a diary with me. Hang on a minute. It's
Wednesday.
Wednesday of the month.
2 Wednesdays from now. But the point is,
20th.
what's happening? I haven't got my.
It'll be the 20th, won't it?
Yeah, 20th.
It will be. It's going to be a health and safety discussion, or a health and safety presentation
by George.
20th.
And Jeff and I are doing something, and it's a participation. It's not a lecture or a talk. It'll be a participatory session.
Basically,
we will be facilitators rather than lecturers.
Right.
So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great discussion. Dave,
Yeah.
thank you for a brilliant topic.
Well, it was just a natter, wasn't it?
It was more than a natter. I think there was an awful lot that came out of that one.
Yes, yes, I think it was very good.
Very useful.
Very, very useful. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Just to say all those kind words that I said about you earlier.
And thank you for those. Are much appreciated.
I will bid you a good night.
Yes,
Look after yourselves in COVID lockdown.
Tomorrow I get my jab. Tomorrow.
Yay.
Oh, well done.
Excellent.
Vulnerable 90-year-old.
Yeah. No, not quite yet.
How much notice did you get of that, Dave?
About a week.
Ah.
But sadly, there's going to be a 12-week gap between I get tomorrow and the next one, which is not right at all.
It takes 3 weeks for the new one to kick in, and then they say that 8 weeks later or 9 weeks later, you get the second one, which will give you the full Monty.
You can blame Tony Blair for that idea, but he didn't say it was a good idea, but they've stretched it to its limit now.
Yeah, absolutely.
They shouldn't have done that. Anyway, that's another subject. Wish you all good night.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good night.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Remember, we're looking for volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Everyone's gone.
No, they haven't. They're going.
Going fast.
Dave.
Okay. Bye.
Bye now.
I will get you.
No worries.
I'm going to be the last to leave.
Okay.
All right.
David. David, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant topic.
Good meeting. Good meeting. Definitely.
It was really good.
That's what a good discussion is about.
No. It was really, really good, and it worked.
Yes, it
All we
did.
need to do is come up with 12 more.
That's a big ask. Anyway.
If we sort of get the programming committee together, and there's not many people, if let's say there are 4 of us, I think we can come up with X number of topics.
Yeah, you don't need 6 people.
No, you don't. You need a small number of people to brainstorm and say, yes, yes, yes. No, I think Does It Matter was brilliant because it was an introduction into all sorts of different subjects.
Yeah, it wasn't focused at all, except on.
No. And I wanted, and I left the discussion to flow, and we left the discussion to flow, and it flowed very, very well.
Yeah, we even got Ian talking, new guy.
Yeah, no, it was good. And in fact, talking about what he was doing. He's doing more turning than we thought he was.
Yeah, well, I tried to provoke him into saying something. I deliberately, he'd been quiet all night, so you have to kind of...
oh, you're right.
Stimulate him a little bit.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So what's the topic for next month?
Well, you mean the next members' night?
Session.
I don't know. Think of something.
Finishes is an interesting...
it always brings up a lot of discussion, does finishes.
Sorry?
It always brings up a lot of discussion.
Yes, it does.
And nobody quite knows how to do it.
No, exactly. And I think it would be really interesting because somebody came up with it tonight. I finished my bowl 5 years ago. I don't know what the hell it's doing. What do I do now? Which is quite interesting. I've had a real problem in as much as I put sanding seed on a piece of rosewood, old rosewood. It's gone really, really white and cloudy.
Oh.
Why? So it's something I wouldn't mind discussing, all sorts of different finishes. And somebody else said, I think it was Tom, I only use oil finishes.
Well, I didn't know about. I automatically always use sanding sealer, irrespective. But now they're saying you shouldn't do that. You should just, if it's a finishing oil, you should put that on and don't use sanding sealer.
Because it sinks into the wood.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. But it won't sink into rosewood. Rosewood is too dense.
Too dense, yeah, boxwood. Well, maybe we can get the chap from, what's he called?
Chestnut.
Chestnut to come along.
I owe him a bottle of scotch. Or
Well-
we owe him a bottle of scotch.
Do we? Did he not charge for the last session?
No, he didn't.
Oh.
So we do owe him one.
Maybe it's pushing it to get him to come again, but he is the expert.
No, he is, but he is pushing his own product.
So what?
Which I don't blame him for. But he is pushing sanding sealer.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure that if all of our sheds are below freezing, sanding sealer is right, because I think sanding sealer goes white.
Does it?
Yes. I've got a major problem. I've got a big piano leg, or the top of a piano leg, which I put sanding sealer on, and I've got to strip it down and literally go back down to basics. It's rosewood.
You can get sanding sealer as a liquid in a bottle or as an aerosol. The trouble is, it's very hard to get the aerosol. I like the aerosol because it gives you a nice even.
Yeah.
But it's quite hard to get. But
Okay, well, maybe finishes is a subject we could discuss.
yeah, well, we've got a month to think about that.
We have, indeed.
We'll think about that.
Stay COVID free.
Yeah.
Keep
good.
well.
I say you too. You've had it, so.
Yeah, I know, but I might get it again.
No, you won't.
No, I'm hoping I won't.
Did any of your family get it?
Julia got it.
Is she okay?
No, we're all fine. We actually suffered so little. It was amazing.
Well, I mean, the news tonight was just horrific.
Well,
You
the
see that?
numbers now, deaths over 1,000.
It's just terrible. Yeah.
And 1 in 30 houses in London.
Yeah, I can't. I'm so happy to get my shot tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Mm.
Yeah, you really do need to get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope there aren't any side effects.
Well, I don't know.
And even if there are, who cares?
In a way, yeah. Well, I wish you a nice evening.
You too.
And,
Keep well.
Be in touch.
Absolutely. See you. Bye.